Thank you guys so much for being here. I mean, it's every time you come to one of these things, for me, it's always neat because it's family. You know, we look around and you know, every time we come, we meet somebody else, we extend our little family, and we hope that by the time that the 83rd legislature rolls around, we'll even have a stronger and stronger family to deal with the things that we have to deal with as grassroots people. I have the honor and the privilege to introduce a person who is on the job over in the Capitol. He is our senior member that's here with us. And well, in fact, let me digress just a little bit. We had a gentleman by the name of Wayne Christian last year or the year before who came over to our staging area, brought the state reps over, and stood in line and stood for us and stood for every Tea Party member that came to Austin, Texas. We lost Wayne, and we lost Wayne because of the speaker redistricting situation. You guys know about that. And it wasn't pretty, and it's not going to be pretty. In our mind, we just see no way to rectify that. Unless we can elect men like the man I'm fixing to introduce to take his place. Bill Zedler is the House Representative for House District 96, Southwest Tarrant County. That takes in Arlington, Mansfield, and Kennedale. Bill Zedler, there's three ways, there's just three words that I can think of right now to describe this gentleman. Courage, conviction, and Texas. You know how you can always tell when the grassroots calls, Bill Zedler answers. He really does. There's not a person in this room that can't pick up the phone and talk to this gentleman. If you need help, if you need an answer to a question, if you need something on the House floor or whatever, Bill Zedler will do his best to take care of it. Thank you very much, Bill. If you'll come up.
Hey, it is great to be here with y'all. I'm going to take off my watch and look at this. He said, you got 10 or 15 minutes. I kind of do. Have you ever heard the story about the little boy who was sitting by his dad in the church? And he said, Daddy, what? You know, I've noticed that every time the pastor gets up there and he takes his watch off and puts it down, and he said, what does that mean? And his dad looked at the boy and he said, absolutely nothing. Well, it means something tonight, I promise. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you this. It is good to be here with you all tonight. Because I look across this crowd, and I'll tell you this. You are the cavalry to me. Because I've been in this fight since 1976. And when Ronald Reagan first ran. And I ran, when I first ran for office, I ran for the convictions and the principles that he stood for back in 1976. Free enterprise, limited government, limited taxes, family values. And I want to tell you that the reason I appreciate you guys is that, you know what, y'all had a marvelous impact across this state. Yes, we lost good people like Wayne. We lost good people like Jim Lanford. But you know what? We gained some phenomenal people. This legislature is going to be a whole lot more conservative than it was last time. And last time's was more conservative than it was the time before. And I want to tell you this, that in this legislative session, there will be half the legislature has turned over. There were people who looked out at this last primary, and they said, I think I've had enough. I'm not going to run again. And we said, hoorah! Here's the thing. One of the things I wanted to do tonight is talk to you a little bit about David Simpson and why I'm supporting David Simpson for Speaker. Because David Simpson, first of all, they're going to tell you, they're going to say, well, he hasn't been around that long. Well, let me tell you something, friends. Yes, David Simpson has only been here one session. Joe Strauss, when he ran, was here a session and a half.
That's right.
So, but the other thing is this. For those of you who weren't around when Joe Strauss first run and was first in the legislature, most people would have said, in fact, I can remember there were people that asked when he became Speaker, they said, I really don't know this guy. And the reason why was that he sat in his chair. And he just sat in his chair. And then he sat in his chair. And in fact, Joe Strauss was never, or rarely at the front mic, and I don't think he was ever at the back mic. And so David Simpson, in the one session he's been there, has had far more experience than Joe Strauss ever dreamed of. Because here's the thing. David Simpson was calling points of order. David Simpson he brought through the TSA bill, and despite overwhelming odds against it, boy, he got it pretty darn far. There's only one reason why that bill kept moving forward, and despite the fact that there were some unseen hands trying to keep it from going, is because David Simpson's persistence. I want to tell you one other thing. That when you look at leadership, you know what? I've never looked at experience first. First thing I look at is character. Because you know what? I don't care how much you have. Amen. I don't care how much experience you have. You've got to have character, and David Simpson has character. The other thing is he's one of the most humble individuals I've ever met. And for an elected official, that is very he's very humble. But the other thing is this, that David Simpson epitomizes courage. Okay? Because you know what the pressure is when you're a freshman? You are to be seen but not heard. And David, in a very humble way, said, I'm going to get up and say something. And so David Simpson had the courage of his convictions to stand up and make tough decisions when there were a lot of good people who didn't. Okay? But the other thing is this, is that David, what he wants to do is transform the house. And let me give you a few prime examples. Do you know right now, and some of the stuff that went around this last session, or this, in the primaries, and as we've talked about the speaker and stuff like that, has hit it right on the head. I mean, you'll hear some of the Strauss supporters say, wow, we had the most conservative session we've ever had, all this good stuff passed. Friends, we had 101 Republicans out of 150. What do you expect? Yeah. Good grief. If we couldn't get good stuff done then, what could we do? Yeah. But you know what? With all the good stuff that we got passed, there was still lots of stuff that it couldn't even get out of committee. Yeah. And so here's the thing. Here's the thing. You need to change the way the House is being run. Amen. Okay? Because let me tell you, friends, there's nothing worse than to have a bill that has 90 co-authors on it. 90 co-authors on it, and you can't get that bill to the floor. Okay? Because you know what happens? Very often, and I've seen it happen time and again. An unseen hand comes up, and all of a sudden, well, gee, I don't know why I can't. Well, we don't know why I can't. And you have these committee chairmen look at you with some dumb look on their face. Or the other thing is they'll say, well, I know that they're telling you, like I had one bill one time that I had all the members of the committee sign on. Well, we support the bill. Had all the list of them, right? Yeah. Well, they're lying to you. They really don't want to support the bill, and so I'm not going to bring it up for a vote.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And just recently, we were at the Rules Committee, or at the Rules meeting, and what they said was, you know what? There's lots of times they're out there saying yes, but they're coming back saying, no. You know, let me tell you, if we've elected people that don't have the convictions to go home and tell their constituents that it's a bad bill, if that's what they believe, then you know what? We need to get somebody else down there.
Yeah. Right. Hey.
Because let me tell you, lots of times I'll get where, you know, somebody's back home, they're really chomping the bit for something, and you know what? I say, well, now I may not tell them it stinks, but I'll go back and say, this is why I disagree with that. And you know what? Then it's up to me to convince them. And if I can't convince them, then maybe it's time to get somebody else up there. Because there's lots of people that want bigger and bigger and bigger government, and more higher spending, and of course that means higher taxes. They just try and act like it's not. But, so, here's the thing. We need to change the process, and David Simpson's willing to change the process. Because, you know what? We ought to have it where, if the majority of the members of the House want to vote on a piece of legislation and they're supporting it, you know what? You should not have, listen to this, you should not have one locally elected official who stops it.
That's right.
That's exactly what goes on. That's why I support David Simpson for Speaker. And I want to thank you for doing what you're doing. Let me tell you, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, okay? But I'll tell you this. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, I believe that the fact that David is running is going to have an impact on the process. We've already heard him say, well, you know what? Yes, we think it may be a good idea that we don't have committee chairmen serving on the calendars committee. Because you know what? That's what we've had the last two sessions. We've had I mean, when Tom Craddock, you know, you might have heard a lot of complaints about Tom Craddock. He dispersed power. He did not believe that power ought to be in the hands of a few people. When Joe Strauss becomes Speaker, concentrated power. And very often it was in the hands of somewhere around 10 people. Okay? There were 11 of them that eventually made him Speaker along with 65 Democrats. So, you know, that's how he became Speaker. And those 11 people were really, I mean, let me tell you, they were put on the calendars committee, they were put on state affairs committee, they were put in all powerful committees. And that power was concentrated in the hands of a small number of people. And you should not have that. You ought to dispense and disperse power. And that's what David Simpson wants to do. So, thank you for being here. And let me add one other thing. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, this is a long fight. When I got involved in 1976 in the Republican Party, let me tell you, we had the old Republican establishment, the country club Republicans that were basically running the party. And they hated Ronald Reagan. And what it boils down to is this. It didn't happen overnight. But slowly but surely, we changed the platform. We made it more conservative and more conservative. Today, let me give you an example. If a pro-life bill hits the floor, there is going to be, I want to say this with one caveat. I was going to say there's not one Republican that's going to vote against it. There is one, her name's Sarah Davis. She's out of Houston. She's in a very liberal part of Houston. Okay, it's fine. But you know what? You go anywhere else around the state, they're all going to vote for it. In fact, that's why if you look at all the people that are running, let me ask you this. Did y'all ever see any? He's a moderate Republican. He is a pro-choice Republican. You don't see that, brother. Let me tell you. In fact, one of the things I've railed against is, you know what? When they tell you that they're conservative, don't you believe it until you go back and look at their voting record and see how it's analyzed by the various conservative organizations down there. Because they're a Republican in the State House that doesn't go home and tell their constituents that they're conservative. There's only one problem. A lot of times, their voting doesn't match up with their rhetoric. I can't tell you the number of times, you know, we took millions of dollars away from Planned Parenthood this last session. I can't tell you the number of times that when we were having, let me tell you this, we did it all by amending the bills. We couldn't get the pro-life legislation out of committee. There's only one we got out, and that was the Sonnebrand bill. But we amended bills, okay? And you'd have been amazed at the number of Strauss lieutenants that come up to us and they look, we are tired of voting on all this abortion. and there was a group of us that said, well, that's too bad. We're going to vote a few more times. Okay, just a few more. So here's the thing. Things don't change overnight. But you know what? Y'all made a huge impact. You need to continue doing it.
We ain't going nowhere.
Good. Because changes like what we're seeing do not take place in one election cycle or even two. It takes time to do it, but you are having an impact. So keep up the good work. God bless you, God bless Texas, and God bless America.